Arab Emirate that was called Transjordan, and we'll hang that one there. In 1946, Ben Gurion, who later became the prime minister of Israel when it became an independent state, had a settlement, Jewish settlement, established in Gaza. But in the War of Independence, Israel lost Gaza to the Egyptians, and they signed an armistice in 1948 and defined what is called the Gaza Strip.
Right.
And just as in the War of 1948, Israel lost a part of the territory west of the Jordan River, which was called the West Bank. Okay, now, this territory that became the Gaza Strip. First of all, during the 1948 War of Independence, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who had fled to Cairo before the war started because he was so anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic actually, broadcast by radio before the 1948 war that all the Arabs in the land of Israel should flee, to leave it clear for the Arab nations, the armies of 6 Arab nations to come in and just wipe out the Jews and push them into the sea. And any Arabs that are there, they're going to be killed too. So this is where the refugee problem originated. You hear about the refugee problem.
Right, right.
They fled. They fled to Jordan. They fled to Gaza. And it was not the Israeli government, but it was the UN that made refugee camps, set up refugee camps in the Gaza Strip and refugee camps in Jordan. And these refugee camps are in pitiful condition. But don't blame this on the Israelis. And I just want to quote from a book of the pitiful conditions that were in Gaza in the West Bank during this 19-year period between 1948 and 1967, in the next war, excuse me, in the next war Israel had with the Arabs, and they regained Gaza and the West Bank. But during that 19-year interim, here was the condition of the Arabs in the West Bank and in Gaza. Quote from the book entitled Harsh Realities. For 19 years until 1967, Jordan brutally occupied the renamed West Bank with its 20 UN refugee camps. And when the Western Palestinians, now these are the Palestinians in the West Bank, and when the Western Palestinians rioted in December 55, April 57, April 63, November 66, and April 67. Now, this is the West Bank under the Jordanians. When the Arabs there rioted, King Hussein of Jordan sent in tanks, which shelled city streets, machine gun people at random, killing hundreds of men, women, and children. Now they're complaining about how the Israelis treat the Arabs in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza. Then it goes on to say, quote, the Gaza Strip, as it was known for the 19 years of harsh Egyptian occupation, had 8 refugee camps in which the Palestinians were forced to live in overcrowded squalor. Egypt refused to absorb any refugees into their country, kept them stateless, denied passports, and forbid them to travel or work in Egypt. Emphasis here, for the Palestinian demand to work in the Israel proper. Mm-hmm. But under that time, the Egyptians wouldn't let them work in Egypt proper. Again with the quote, for 19 years of brutal occupation of their fellow Arabs, Jordan and Egypt kept these areas in deliberate state of economic stagnation and severe unemployment. Average unemployment in the early 60s ran between 35 and 45% and up as high as 83%. During this entire period, the world was silent. Only after Israel's seizure of these territories in the defensive war in 1967 did anybody discover the legitimate rights and national aspirations of the Palestinian Arabs. Now, from a humanitarian standpoint, their situation, and we're going on with the quote, improved immeasurably under Israeli administration after 1967. Unemployment is around a mere 1%, and this is in 1989, before the Intifada started. Mm-hmm. The Israelis just welcomed the Palestinians into Israel proper and gave them full employment, so there's only 1% unemployment, where under the Jordanians and the Egyptians, it was as high as 83%. And just to show you, well, at that time, now I'm ad-libbing, I'm not quoting, so don't take this as a quote. During that time, there was no electricity in the West Bank and in Gaza. It was the Israelis that brought electricity in after, and fresh running water after 1967. The infant mortality rate pre-1967 was 140 infant deaths per thousand. And this was brought down by the Israelis with hospitals, modern hospitals and all, to only 30 per 1,000. At a time when the rest of the Arab world still has an infant mortality rate of 80 per 1,000. And, well, I think this is enough time to...
Yeah, we're actually starting to get near the end of our first hour here. But so if I were to just go back and sum up what you just said, I mean, there was an awful lot there. But the bottom line is, with Gaza and the West Bank, Gaza was part of Israel, and then in 1948 it was lost when they were attacked. Then 19 years later, Israel was again attacked, and they gained Gaza and the West Bank back. Mm-hmm. So
1 minute, Rick.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. In both cases, Gaza and the West Bank were part of Israel, were lost when they were attacked, were regained when they were attacked. So they were part of Israel. Israel's attacked a few times. It gets lost, it gets put back in place. So the big question then has to be, well, if it was part of Israel, why is Israel giving up this land if it belongs to them, if it's part of what was given to them not only by God in the Old Testament, but through the government set up in the 40s? What happened? Something dramatic here is going on. And folks, as we wrap up this first hour, we want to carry that question into the second hour. And it's something that seems so plain in some ways. If Israel, in fact, has a right to this land, why would they give it up? Is this what God wants them to do? Is this what they should do? What are the political ramifications? What are the real reasons behind the giving up of the land? There's so much to cover and so little time. So be sure to join us for the second hour. This is Christian Questions. The question at hand is, do the Palestinians or Israel belong in Gaza? And for Jonathan and Rick, we will be back after the news. But until then, think about it.